The experts are always telling us how the stars and the moon affect our lives. But do you believe they can also influence the future of the world and its economies? My next guest does. Her name is Athena Starwoman, obviously the name she was given at birth, and she's just returned from the World Economical Astrology Conference in New York, where she found our so-called lucky country, Australia, might not be that lucky. So let's please find out more as we welcome Athena Starwoman. Athena, I flippantly said that you would have been born with the name Athena Starwoman.
Well, not really, but I never tell anyone my real name because it was one of those names like Betty Bloggs, that type of name. And whenever I've confided in anyone, it's ended up that they've called me that forever. So I think Athena's something I'll stay with.
Right. That'll be very interesting to one of our switch girls here because her name is Betty Bloggs. And
well, just as well she didn't change it.
Athena, you've been to this conference and you've discovered that perhaps Australia is not as lucky as we'd like to believe it to be.
Well, it was very interesting. I now have an office in New York and I saw that there was a conference on the world economical situation. It was so interesting because had I have not gone, Australia probably was one country they mightn't even have brought up at the conference. It's very interesting when you're out of Australia how much it is left out of these type of things. And why it was very relevant that I went and made the fact known that I was Australian and had the Australian chart put up was the fact that two countries came out of the conference, their astrological charts, as being the countries who were going to go through probably the most tumultuous time with the economy.
Australia and who else?
One was England and the other was Australian. And why this is, it's a little bit technical, but I'll share it with people because the planets have recently changed sign, the major planets. They've moved from Sagittarius into Capricorn. Now both Australia and the United Kingdom are Capricorn countries, so they're getting hit very powerfully by the negative energy operating at the moment. In the past, they were Sagittarian energies. Now, Bob Hawke is a Sagittarian. Paul Keating is a Capricorn. So it's very interesting to note how the two different leaders, the current top people in our political arena, operate better under different conditions. It's Paul Keating is now the person who's getting the heaviest astrological energy, and also Hawke is now more or less, in terms of astrology, finished.
That's interesting because night before last there was a piece on television and it covered Paul Keating and also John Howard, John Howard at the Liberal convention, but Paul Keating was addressing economical gentlemen from, and women obviously too, all around Australia, and he was in devastating form.
He's got the power at the moment. The power has been transformed from Hawke to Keating, and you just have to watch him when he gets up there. He knows he's got it, like he really can get out there and make people listen, and he's so eloquent too. He really has his act together.
So Bob's on a downswing, is he?
Yes, I would say that before the end of this year, probably around about October, according to the things that came out at the conference, several world leaders will go. Margaret Thatcher, Bob Hawke, not necessarily under...
When you say go, you mean lose their roles or go?
Well, maybe both. I mean, go can be go. I hope, certainly hope not, that it is that severe, but that is a potential possibility.
Well, the one thing you can be sure of, if they go, they'll lose office too, won't they?
Yeah, well, I would say it would also be not a natural thing, it would be an act of violence.
What, really? In which
Mainly
case?
because the Australia chart, where the conjunction, the negative astrological conjunction, this is heavy but it explains it, is in the house of death. So it's like a rebirth situation Australia is going through. It has to suffer to come out of this, and I think personally, I'm very optimistic. I think this will be the gloom before the boom. It'll really take off.
So you're not suggesting that there will be necessarily a death of a leading political
Well,
figure
it's
in Australia?
possible from the way the astrology chart looks.
Really?
And I certainly don't want that to be the truth, but it is a high, in astrology terms, looking at it as an astrologer, that is a potential possibility.
What I can't understand though is with astrology, when you forecast something, if that person is very, very careful of their life and also of walking across roads and things like that, and nothing happens, you can then say, well, you know, I warned him.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden, if he falls in a mangled heap and he departs this mortal coil, you can then say, told you so.
Well, I I don't, when I read people's charts, I'm not interested in that aspect, but I've read studies on the particular subject of telling death from a horoscope. John F. Kennedy, people like that, people saw his death, or said they did. And there was one person who the astrologers told that he was into astrology. His death showed on his chart. So he stayed at home and really locked himself away from anything dangerous. And he got up on a little ladder to take a book out of a bookcase and fell off and broke his neck. And he was someone who was taking steps. This is a classic case cited in many astrology books.
Who was it?
I can't remember the name, but it was someone who was in an astrology world.
Oh, I've got some good stories for you too,
Yeah.
Athena. I've got some rippers. What about the true believers of astrology? I mean, they really follow their stars so closely. What about the astrology that you read in the women's magazines?
Well, I write the ones in Clio and the Daily Mirror. And what I do is I use the moon to get the idea about how the emotional feeling of the day is. And it's amazing how people who really watch them consistently can say once every 4 days get something very positive out of it, because it has to cover everyone born under one sign.
Exactly.
But there is quite a good way of doing it. And look, we're surrounded all the time by news of violence, bad things. It's nice to have your own little special bit of the newspaper that's just for you. It's
Exactly.
much for entertainment
And
as
people
anything
love it
else.
too. I mean, I really believe that you're successful when all of a sudden there's a column in Popular Mechanics.
Yeah.
And I mean, you know then that you've really made it. What about, I believe you've had a look at my star signs and what the
Yes.
things are doing for me.
Well, I'm a Cancer too, so I'm very in tune.
I'm a Leo, aren't I? 23rd
Well, you're
of
right
July.
on the cusp. So
23rd of July. It falls on a Sunday, by the way. So it gets on the Friday. That's okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yes.
The only way we'd know whether you're a Cancer or a Leo is to draw up your chart for the exact time of
I was
birth.
born at 9:10 on a Saturday morning.
Well, I'd have to do that. So it's been very difficult for people born under Cancer and Leo lately, because basically they're going through a total restructuring and they need to make very major moves to fit in with that restructuring. And ideally, after the 1st of August, many things in your life are going to change. It looks like there's some very strong foreign influences coming up. Also, I would
What do you mean by that?
Well, it's likely you're going to have either a trip away or foreign influences are going to come into
on the
your
1st of
life.
August, I'm going overseas.
Yes, around that date, yeah. And foreign influences are coming to your life. Also, it's going to be very hard for you to keep your weight down at the moment, because it's your armour against the world. And it's like that's what you're patting yourself with. You're very emotional and sensitive. It's very difficult for you to deal with heavy at people around you. And you'll find it's incredibly difficult to stop putting weight on, even though you'll go on a diet and do all sorts of things, because the aspects surrounding you say that this person is trying to protect themselves.
I'm in for a bugger of a year, aren't I? Overseas with someone foreign and also overweight. I mean, it's going to be interesting. But is there good news at the end of the trail?
Well, I'm sure it is. I'd say that because these things are happening, you're being awoken to many very positive things about the world you live in. This is a wake-up time for all of us. I mean, this is not something that's happening by accident, where every sign is going through some sort of wake-up, and yours is a particularly loud one.
Okay.
It's a loud alarm bell.
Right. Okay, Athena, thank you very much indeed for being with us today, and I'm
It was my
intrigued.
pleasure.
Yeah, and it was good to meet you, and I'm pleased the conference went well.
Thank you.
Athena Starwoman.